In this Ripple XRP live trading analysis, we break down the key price action levels, Fibonacci zones, and swing trading setups you should be watching right now. This XRP live trading update covers support and resistance, market structure, and potential breakout scenarios so you can understand the current Ripple market direction now. Let's begin. Every time Ripple has attempted to break higher, sellers have been waiting aggressively overhead. The strongest attempt came on 15th February at 1.670. Then 1 month later, another rally failed on 17th March at 1.697. And most recently, just over 1 week ago, Ripple once again failed to sustain upside momentum after reaching 1.549 on 14th May. So naturally, many traders looking at this chart would probably conclude that sellers clearly have the upper hand. And at first glance, that argument actually makes sense. Because if we study the daily swing highs closely, we can clearly see those highs progressively getting lower over time. That usually tells us buyers are struggling to sustain bullish momentum. However, that is not the complete picture. Because while sellers continue defending the upside, buyers are also quietly holding their ground underneath the market. And this is where the chart starts becoming much more interesting. If we examine the structural lows more carefully, Ripple continues repeatedly finding support between 1.270 and 1.280. The low on 28th February at 1.270, the 2nd April low at 1.280, and the 5th April low at 1.279 have all continued holding steady without being violated. That matters because markets rarely compress tightly between defending buyers and defending sellers forever. Eventually, one side normally gains control and forces a larger directional move. Now let's begin putting some structure around this outlook. One of the fastest ways to understand market conditions is by studying the monthly ranges. And what the monthly ranges are currently showing us is extremely important. Over the last 5 months, Ripple's ranges have steadily compressed from 1.915 to 0.559, then 0.313, then 0.231, and now 0.143. That is a very significant volatility contraction. And compression phases like this are important because markets constantly cycle between expansion, contraction, compression, and volatility release. The tighter the compression becomes, the greater the probability that a much larger move eventually develops afterwards. So while Ripple may currently appear frustrating and directionless on the surface, underneath the chart, pressure is gradually building. And that is exactly what Ripple now appears to be setting up for. Like many crypto trading market structures right now, the February range continues dominating price action almost 4 months later. The high was formed on 1st February at 1.678 and still remains unbroken to this day. At the same time, the structural low formed on 6th February at 1.118 also remains completely intact. That tells us Ripple is still trapped inside what we call a dominant range. And understanding the dominant range is critical because it allows us to identify where the real battleground between buyers and sellers exists. Right now, Ripple live price action is trading marginally below the dominant range midpoint at 1.3795. The highest amount of traded volume is also concentrated around this exact region. That tells us the true battlefield between buyers and sellers is currently centered around the 1.380 area. And this is why we constantly talk about boxing in the market. We identify the dominant range high, the dominant range low, the midpoint, and the Fibonacci reaction zones. Then we study how price behaves inside those structural boundaries. Because once we understand where the market is trapped, we can begin identifying where expansion may eventually occur. And Fibonacci price zones are extremely useful for helping us define those boundaries. On the upside, the Fibonacci resistance zone sits between 1.553 and 1.563. But this is not ordinary resistance, because when we add the 2026 anchored VWAP, we can immediately see why Ripple Live price action continues struggling to push higher. The VWAP sits directly inside that same resistance region, creating a powerful resistance cluster overhead. And whenever multiple technical resistance factors begin aligning together, Fibonacci resistance, anchored VWAP, declining swing highs, and dominant range pressure, markets often struggle to break through cleanly on the first attempt. On the downside, buyers continue defending the Fibonacci support zone between 1.217 and 1.229. So at the moment, Ripple remains trapped between defending support underneath price and layered resistance overhead. As we continue this XRP live trading analysis, pay close attention to how Ripple price action reacts around these Fibonacci levels and key support and resistance zones. These swing trading structures are critical for understanding the Ripple live market structure and potential next price action move. So what are the key levels traders should now be watching closely on Ripple live price action? On the upside, buyers first need to break the last swing high formed on 14th May at 1.559. Then, Ripple would need to overcome what currently appears to be formidable resistance sitting inside the Fibonacci resistance zone and the 2026 anchored VWAP region. That is the area currently suppressing bullish continuation attempts. However, the real battle continues happening around the 1.380 area. The anchored volume profile visually shows us that very clearly. Whether Ripple can establish acceptance above or below 1.380 will likely tell us a lot about the next major directional move. If prices begin breaking lower, then the key structural level to monitor becomes the 5th April low at 1.279 as price gradually works its way towards the Fibonacci support zone underneath. Overall, this Ripple live trading setup continues to show important price action reactions around major Fibonacci zones and swing trading levels. Continue watching the XRP market structure, support and resistance levels, and the price action signals we have discussed today to see how Ripple's live trading volatility reacts to these key levels. You are now several steps ahead of the majority of traders and investors with today's Ripple Live update. We hope we provided some value to you in this video.
Join our free daily crypto trading newsletter. It's just a 5-minute read to keep up to date with our live outlook on Bitcoin and altcoin. The link is above and in the description. If you found this analysis useful, subscribe to Crypto Trading Mastery and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next daily video. Thanks for watching.